Hello, friends. This is Suzanne Kohlberg. Welcome to episode 276 of the Nope Coach podcast. When grief is close to the surface. Full transparency, full confession, if this wasn't a daily show, I wouldn't be recording today. For those of you who are new, you might be like, oh my gosh, this is getting deep fast. But for reference, my mum passed away not quite 3 months ago. Yeah, not quite 3 months ago. I just had to work out the date. And grief is let's just say it's a funny thing, but it's not funny. Grief it's hard to define. It's all and then it's nothing. It's ever present and it feels like you can't breathe, and then it's gone. And then a day or so might go past where it doesn't come to mind, and then guilt can come in and piggyback off of the grief. And yeah, it's a lot. So what I want to talk about today is, when grief is close to the surface, when it feels like one of my clients, I run a program called Why Wait. And as part of it, in the current iteration, we have what I call the Why Wait Radio, which is a Voxer channel where we can all share what's happening. It's fabulous. It's amazing to have multiple conversations at once. And because we're different places in the globe, here in Australia, it's currently summer. Some of the people are in Canada and US, it's winter. Anyway, someone was talking about their grief for a pet. And she was like, it feels like the veil is really thin right now. And I thought, what a perfect way to describe it. And I could really relate to that too. And I don't claim to be an expert, and none of this is like medical advice or anything like this. This is just me sharing my own journey, what I do when grief is close to the surface. And if you have things that you do that work for you, I'd love for you to pop them in the comments. If you're watching on YouTube, if you're listening on Apple, Spotify, or any other audio, then just go to my website, suzannekohlberg.com, click on contact, send me a message. What do you do? What works for you when grief is close to the surface? I think for me, it's not a one size fits all. Like sometimes a strategy that works on one day, on another day won't. And as I said, grief is a fickle thing. It's constantly evolving and changing. And I saw a image on Facebook once, and I really wish I'd screenshotted it, and I haven't, but I'm sure it will come up again. But it showed what we thought would happen, and that would be grief shrinking. But instead, what happens is that we grow around it. And that really resonated with me. So some of the things I do when grief is close to the surface, if there's space, like if my kids are asleep or at school, or, I don't need to be present, like I'm not cooking a meal or I'm not refereeing my kids bickering or something. If there's space, I'll allow myself to really feel it, because it kind of reminds me of a tsunami at times. If we try and contain it and shove it down, then it ends up just getting bigger and bigger and bigger and bursts forth. So if there's space, I might sit on the couch, have a bath, have a shower, have a cry in the shower, go for a walk, sit in nature, just allow the feeling and just notice what's happening and what's going on, where I feel it in my body, what exactly I'm feeling. And sometimes if there's something piggybacking underneath it, like sometimes the grief will be really big because I feel guilty that it's been a couple of days and I haven't thought about my mum. So, that's one thing that I'll do. Sometimes if there's not space, like if I am in the middle of a client call and a wave comes, or if, as I said, my kids are bickering and I'm, interceding with whatever terrible things happening. She breathed my air. He touched me. She looked at me. That kind of thing. It'll just be like taking a breath, counting to 5, and letting myself know that I'll get to this later. Like it's, I suppose you could call it compartmentalizing it, but it's like it's giving it the brief acknowledgement, but then also that I can't give it the full focus right now. Last week, I don't think I spoke about my car breaking down. I don't know if that ended up being a whole episode. That was an adventure. But anyway, I live in Sydney. I'm a very anxious driver at the best of times. And My car had broken down and been repaired. So they picked me up on the shuttle bus, and I had picked my car up and was driving it home. I get anxious driving at the best of times. And what I used to do is ring my mum. And she'd talk me through it. She'd prattle on about whatever, and she'd just keep me distracted. Obviously, I'd be watching the road, but, you know, she just had this way about her when I was really anxious when I was driving. And then I get to a couple of big intersections and the lights are out and there's no police there. Usually if the lights are out, the police are maintaining the traffic, and I'm so anxious. And my first thought was, I'll ring my mum. And then I'm like, I can't ring my mum. And then I was really upset, and whew, and I'm like crying, and I'm like, I can't see because I'm crying. And yeah, it's a lot. It's a lot. So breathing, I find really good. If it had been safe to do so, pulling the vehicle over, obviously that I highly recommend. I couldn't pull over because I was in an uncontrolled intersection. Do not recommend. But, you know, just not making it mean there's anything wrong with you or that you're bad. Or I think, you know, sometimes the grief itself can be quite clean, but it's what we attach to it. Like, it's been this amount of time, I should have been over this by now. Or you know, the shame or guilt about forgetting, like, oh, you forgot that your mum's not here. Like that hurts more than the clean grief itself. The other thing, share. If you've got a good friend, a loved one, somebody that you can share with, I would recommend first asking if they have space, especially if it's a loved one. Like if it's a mutual, like if I was going to ring my sister or my dad or someone, they've lost my mum too. So they might not be the best person to hold space, because my share might bring up their share and then we end up going in a downward spiral. So it may not be the best to go to somebody who's also experiencing that. Not saying never, but just keeping that in mind. And even if it's a friend, you never know what other people have going on. So I never just like vent or emotionally dump, because, as I said, they might not have the space for that. So asking, saying, you know, I'm having a tough day. Are you available? And chatting to them that way. Or there is support lines like, you know, Beyond Blue or Lifeline. There's places that you can call and you can talk through it with someone, because sometimes just being heard makes so much of a difference. And the final thing I want to share is realizing that it's normal. There's no timeline for grief. There's no etiquette and right way to do grief. Everybody experiences it differently. It hits them at different times. It hurts more at some times than others. And yeah, you're not doing it wrong. You can't do grief wrong. Your experience is wholly uniquely your own. It's normal to have a grief experience, but the way that you experience it might not be the way that other people experience it. And also it might be different to a time you've experienced it before. And I don't think it even depends on the closeness of the person, but like different griefs can hit you for different things in different ways at different times. But I'd really honestly think if you can sit with it and allow it to move through like a wave, it's less likely to become that tsunami. And knowing when, who, and how to reach out to speak to someone, to share what's happening. And other things that you can do is kind of like journaling. I have my podcast topics here, and I was going to do one coming up, like I call journaling. It's kind of like mental decluttering. So sometimes all the stuff I'm holding feels like I'm holding it in my head, and the pressure, just journaling it out. Even if you tear it up or burn it, SuzanneKohlberg.com does not take any responsibility for you burning things. Make sure you burn it outside in a well-ventilated place. But, you know, once you've written something, burning it, tearing it, shredding it, getting rid of it, just mental decluttering, getting it out of your head and onto the paper. There can be such relief in that. I hope this episode's been helpful. As I said, if you've got things that what you do when grief's close to the surface, if you want to comment on YouTube, or if you want to send me a message, go to my website, SuzanneKohlberg.com, click contact. And yeah, thanks for listening. I hope that you tune into the next one. Bye for now.